Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode number 428. And what you hear is the sound of history repeating. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Pretty
Still
exhausted.
reeling from the weekend high of Avengers Endgame and episode 3 of Great Game of Thrones.
The Long Nights.
And the finale of The Orville.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
I don't
That
watch
was
that
also
anymore.
very good.
I need to catch up, but
You're missing out. This second season's been phenomenal.
Really has.
what'd you guys think of Endgame?
I liked it a lot. I can't wait to see it again. It did not feel like 3 hours at all.
No, it really didn't. We won't spoil anything because there are still a lot of people that haven't seen it. So
I quite thoroughly enjoyed it myself. I do feel that maybe it was a slight, didn't quite live up to the, how could you from where Infinity War left off? But it resolved, and it resolved things quite nicely in a very comic booky fashion that I was happy with. So.
well, you're wrong about that first part, but
Yeah, I think it lived up to it. And
Really?
I think it resolved things well enough that I really I have very little complaints.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm
think
I'm not saying I'm complaining by any stretch of the imagination. I just I
And
don't know,
emotionally, it was very satisfying.
Here's
it was
old
a very
man
satisfying
Sean.
movie. Oh, for Pete's sake. It was a very satisfying conclusion. And I guess I could say that if I had a complaint, it was that it was very, very dependent upon. I mean, it literally was the end capstone of this 22 movie adventure, and I felt like, wow, this was you had to be on your game for this one because there were a lot of fanboy moments in it.
I don't even think they're fanboy moments. And the reason I say that is if they were fanboy moments, they would have been like heavy references to the comics. But these were heavy references to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which everybody that is watching this movie to this point should have been relatively familiar with the arcs that have been going on throughout the MCU for all phases. So I don't even think they were fanboy references. I
It's
think they were
continuity
I think
heavy.
they were fan
Continuity
payoffs.
heavy. There you go.
They were fan payoffs, is what they were.
Yeah, they were definitely payoffs.
No, it was very, very good. I can't wait to see it again. We're definitely going to go check it out in IMAX. So.
I think Mason and I are going to go again tomorrow night.
I want to go see it again very soon.
And then Game of Thrones, which had an epic battle this week, which was amazing and had this huge twist at the end that I didn't see coming.
Me neither. I enjoyed it also. Although after seeing Endgame, it didn't quite live up to the emotional stakes that I had with Endgame. Part of that, I think, is also, watching it at home where I can pause it and, it was an hour, 20 minutes, and it
Yeah. Plus, you
took
don't have a
almost-
crowd around you that's cheering every time something
yeah.
happens.
And it took me longer than that to watch the actual episode. So, there were breaks and, I got sucked out of it and stuff like that. So
I'm much
still need-
more emotionally invested in the MCU than I
Yeah.
am in
No,
Game of Thrones. So I totally get that.
agree. I need to see Endgame again just because there was so much cheering, and rightfully so. I was glad that people were reacting the way they were to Endgame, but I need to go see it with fewer people now so that I can catch a few of the little lines that got laughed over or cheered
Yeah.
over or
yeah.
anyway.
I watched another movie about superheroes teaming up to defeat a bald bad guy.
Oh, you watched Justice League finally.
No, I already seen that one. I
Oh.
watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse,
Oh.
Oh.
which was also phenomenal. That was really good. That's going to be a must-own and rewatch frequently. A lot of fun. Very, very well done. And the animation was phenomenal. I loved every bit of it.
Isn't it crazy from a movie that a year ago we were kind of saying, "Oh, what's this going to be? It's going to be its thing, and nobody's really going to care because it's not MCU, and it's and just walking away from that film, going, "Wow, that was just amazing."
Yeah, it's so well done. And I enjoyed Lego Movie, but I didn't think it was all that in a bag of chips like everyone else did. But this, I mean, it's because since it's the same guys. I think it's just heads above everything they've done before. It was just, I can't wait for more out of this multiverse.
Cool. Did you guys do anything else this week?
We watched Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh, that's pretty fun.
It was fun. It surprised me. It kind of, by the time you get to the end, it's kind of de-evolved into a fairly standard rom-com. But there were a lot of things throughout it that first of all, it's very funny. And having an all Asian cast was certainly different. It's not something we normally get a lot of. And I really appreciated the fact that, because it's set in Singapore, and normally when a big budget American movie goes to the East, we get a lot of back alleys. We get a lot of, the triad is hanging out over here, and the ninjas are coming, and it's all about the dangers and the peril. And this very much played out like a travel log. Singapore is beautiful. I'm ready to go visit Singapore after watching this movie. So,
all right. Well, let's move on to our feedback then.
First up in feedback is Jamie.
Jamie writes, "Hello, Vortexers. I'm steadily progressing through your wonderful podcast and quickly approaching episode 100. Keep up the great work." Replies, "I agree with your answer to my question about 13's replacement's gender and or race. I think it's still too early to tell. Still, it was nice to hear your thoughts. Moving on. Episode 89, the dinosaur episodes, Invasion and Spaceship. RFD TV, Channel 231 on Dish Network. If it isn't then, it was. And home to Tractor Auctions, Hee Haw, and Big Joe Polka Show. Nice that you got the opportunity to work on a TV show."
He's referring there, of course, when we worked on Tough Grit.
Yes. There, that's out of the way. I don't mind Invasion of the Dinosaurs. The plot was fine, and the dinosaurs, for the budget that Doctor Who had, weren't too bad. Though if I remember the special features, nobody was happy with how they turned out. They're a little better if you speed it up 1.5 or 2 times normal speed. I hadn't tried
That's
that.
one way to watch it.
That might not be a bad way to watch some of Pertwee's longer stories anyway. As for Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, I enjoyed it. It's fun. The dinosaurs look great. Rory's dad was great. The villain was well done. You mentioned the Doctor's gang. Do you see any correlation between that and a Chibnall written episode and the 13th Doctor referring to her companions as fam?
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. Episode 90, Doctor Who Goes West. I didn't mind the gunfighters. That's not even a better title, I think, than what we had, isn't it? I didn't mind the gunfighters. It's a fun, light romp after the weirdness of the Celestial Toymaker. I didn't really care for the ballad, though. As to those are fighting words. You're going to get Glenn's dander up now.
Some people have no taste. No, I kid. I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea.
As to the topic of original songs in Doctor Who, I can't wait for episode 188 when you cover Doctor Who and the Pirates. As for Western films to watch, my favorites are Chisholm, El Dorado, and Hondo, all starring John Wayne, and Shane, starring Alan Ladd. I've never seen a Clint Eastwood Western.
Oh, you should try them. They're good.
They are good.
I can't think of a bad one.
Not that those are bad choices, but...
No, those are great choices. Although I have never seen Chisholm. That's probably one of the few John Wayne films I have not seen.
Episode 91. First of all, loved your bit about 991st episode. That should definitely go in a best of episode and maybe be recycled if you guys do hit 991.
Well, we're almost halfway there.
Whew.
As to the subject of Battlefield, I really enjoyed this one. Everyone got something to do, the effects were good, and the BBC does explosions well. I enjoyed Brigadier Bambera a lot and was pleased when she returns in the lost story Animal from Big Finish. The Power of Three. I didn't care for this one. It was boring, and the villain was very meh. There were good moments, at least based on your comments, and I liked the reintroduction of Kate Stewart. She'd previously appeared in Downtime, as she goes on to great things, including the unit box sets from Big Finish. However, I felt that it barely had enough material for one episode. It definitely didn't need to be 2 parts, as some suggest.
I don't remember who said that.
Probably me.
I don't think I would. Because, you know,
I think the complaint was the fact that there was all this great family stuff and them waiting, and then the villain was so shortchanged that it needed more to flesh out the villain.
yeah, that's probably true. But I don't remember how I reviewed it back then. But hindsight's 2020. Looking back at it now, I don't think I kind of think I would echo Jamie's sentiments here. I think there's a lot of nothing going on for a long time.
It also looks a lot like some of 13 stuff, and the feel and tone and
Yeah, that's true.
style, focusing on the characters instead of the villain.
Wow, sometimes your predictions are spot on. Chris Chibnall being groomed to be the next showrunner. We heard it first on Traveling the Vortex in 2012. See the 2 hour 14 mark approximately.
We will totally take credit.
One thing that your discussions bring to mind about blowing up the ship and possible survivors, as well as your discussions of the star whale from Beast Below when talking about the Dark Doctor in relation to the previous episode, is that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Has the Doctor, 11 in particular, taken to Vulcan philosophy? Not that I'm aware of.
12 definitely does.
I don't think that was a question for us. I think that was rhetorical.
Anyway, moving on to episode 92, The Weeping Angels and the Pond's Last Hurrah. I remember enjoying this. The story is good and the Pond's farewell is emotional. I agree the Statue of Liberty was just kind of gimmicky and not the good kind. On the topic of the Doctor never able to visit Amy and Rory again, I think that the time dilation, or the time distortion that prevents the Doctor from saving them is centered around them rather than New York, as the 8th Doctor is able to land in New York in October 1938, as seen in Invaders from Mars. Of course, publishing dates may also play into this, but in universe, this seems off.
I certainly think that. I think originally when we reviewed that, we wondered that if it counted the entire year or era, the surrounding year. I think since then we've kind of said that it's more localized than that.
Episode 93, The Sonic One. I've never seen The Visitation. It was one that I hadn't gotten around to before, and I started my big watch through. As to the Sonic itself, yes, it has the potential to be overused, but I still like it. As far as designs go, I like the 12th Doctor's the best. Not the shades, the actual screwdriver. Is the Sonic overused? Yes, probably. Should its functions be limited and rules be drafted for it? Yes, and maybe. You guys touched on this, but I'd like to say that in universe, as time has gone on, the Doctor has upgraded and modded his Sonic, and the Time War was a big jump in upgrades. Also in universe, the psychic paper was a CIA invention, so make of that what you will. In the real world, I would say the writers have overused and become over-reliant on these devices. But when you only have 45 to 50 minutes to tell a story instead of 100 or 4 25-minute parts, you have to find some way to save time. Anyway, that's my take on the Sonic discussion. Other comments. I see episodes are going on YouTube now. This seems like the best opportunity to add visuals as part of the episode. Listen on our website or your device to watch YouTube channel for bonus material, stuff like that. Another place to check for feedback, although based on the number of views, you may want to advertise it a bit more. Anyway, that's all for now. I plan on taking a break from your podcast to listen to a few other things when I reach your 100th episode. Don't worry, I will return. If nothing else, you'll get to catch up with my feedback. However, I still have 7 episodes left before then. Keep up the good work, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right.
We have more feedback.
Let's do our other piece of feedback.
It comes from Robert. He writes, Blu-ray episode. Hello. Sorry I haven't written in quite a while, but I haven't had much to say. I've mainly been writing, and writing some more. Just wanted to drop this quick note your way. I did hear on this week's episode that you're going to talk about the releases of Classic Who on Blu-ray and whether you should buy them or stick with DVDs. I'd suggest that you also consider the notion of keeping physical media or moving to BritBox or any future streaming options. I may have thoughts about that, but I'll save them for after the episode comes out. Yours, Robert.
Yeah, that's
Thank
not
you, Robert.
this
That's an excellent idea.
episode. That's the next episode we'll be talking about that. So, well,
That's
let's move
it
on
for
to
feedback.
the topic at hand, which is Enemy of the Daleks.
Bliss used to be a paradise planet. The Galapagos Islands of space.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, really. But when the TARDIS brings the Doctor, Ace, and Hex to Bliss, it's been overrun with ironweed plants, and the air is heavy with the stench of burnt silk and static electricity. Worse, the Daleks are coming on the trail of a lost patrol of Starship troopers, holed up on the Rourke 279 research facility. Lieutenant Bess Stokes is preparing her last stand against the invaders. But there's a secret on Bliss, a secret guarded by the obsessive Professor Shimura. This time, could it be the Daleks need saving?
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. You know, it was okay. It was an alright episode. It had Daleks, so it satisfied my urges, but it was.
I didn't love it, but
it was pretty run of the mill as far as the Dalek story goes. And not that it didn't have some clever ideas and some different things. It wasn't like a repeat of anything, but the tone and structure of it seemed very much like a Dalek story. And so, you know, it ticked all the boxes, but overall, I just kind of thought, yeah, you know, that was okay. It was an enjoyable list.
I do feel like there's more that could have been done with either, just stripping away one or the other of the major plot points or scaling back, making the Daleks more of an oncoming threat than a, clear and present danger, and focusing more on the abominations that have been created. Or I don't know, it just felt like there was a little just too much going on in the story, that it could have been a little simpler and made it a little bit better.
I think had you made the Daleks more than a clear and present danger, there would have been a way too much more. I think if you'd had that kind of impending doom scenario, I think that it would have got more complex. And so I was kind of glad that the Daleks were relegated to an invading force and were, in order to dispatch this plan that the professor had, in order to a misguided plan that the professor had. That was another thing too, is the misguidedness of the plan. It just, the man seemed too smart to get that far ahead of himself and not realize the repercussions that were coming. Because my first thought when it's revealed what these things are, my initial first thought was, what happens when they chew through all the Daleks? I mean, they're going to go, number one, they set it up by showing them or having them basically eat everything in the laboratory. And I thought, so there's your number one issue, is they're not Dalek focused, they are metal focused, they're machine focused. And so
Right.
there's very little you can do to control something like that when the urge is there to feed. And so I kind of felt that was almost too short-sighted to a fault as far as the character goes, because the man was clearly a genius, well, near genius, as the doctor says, almost a genius, but he just, with not having foreseen that, just seemed unbelievable to me.
Yeah, at first I thought this was a really kind of cool idea. Because so frequently the Dalek episodes are the Daleks being this unstoppable force, and we're supposed to be afraid of them, but it's difficult to keep that fear up because they've been defeated so regularly within Doctor Who. Um, and so somewhere in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, I'm here, I'm along for the ride, but I know how this is going to work out. And it's a base under siege story, and so we're kind of going along, and then these things show up, and it becomes suddenly a very interesting. Oh, this is going to get good because, yeah, I want to root for something to go take the Daleks apart. But the swarm creatures kind of fall into that generic robot bad guy of the month, almost kind of mentality as well. I mean, we've got a mad scientist, we've got a creation that's going to turn on the mad scientist. We've got, boom, 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 boom.
That's me. That's the sound of me ticking off the boxes.
Yeah, and ultimately it becomes very, as you said, kind of run of the mill. It becomes very not satisfying, and I was almost wanting to feel some sympathy for the Daleks. I wanted something that was going to be so scary that it was just going to go out and decimate them. And I don't know, maybe it should have been turned loose on the galaxy. Maybe they should have got off planet, and then we could have dealt with the, now what? But maybe that's too big a story. I don't know.
That's too big of a story, I think.
Tries to get there with the Black Dalek and, him asking to be exterminated by the doctor, and, the eggs being planted in it. But at that point, it's so far along the storyline that it's not, the impact isn't there.
Exactly. Yeah, the Black Dalek, I had very little sympathy for, actually. It's just kind of like, yeah, you deserve that.
I was really excited at first, and then disappointed that this planet they were on wasn't Kimball, or that the thorns that they talked about weren't Varga thorns.
Yeah,
I totally thought it was going to be like a new Kimball, or that's why there are all these thorns in this desolated planet, is because the Daleks were there, and a real missed opportunity not to have some sort of Varga thorn reference.
Very much seemed like a great opportunity to do that then could have tied back into that then just didn't get there.
The other thing that I thought was exciting was the fact that the doctor knows that he's got to be there to make sure some atrocity goes through. And so I was really excited by the prospect of that. What is this? What's going to happen? And it follows through with that idea. But I think the problem that I have is it ultimately sets up a Genesis of the Daleks scenario where he has to commit genocide in order to prevent further atrocities later down the line. And I think that it ended up being it became it became a story crutch to have the lieutenant be the one that sets the self-destruct. And I know why they did it. They did it so that the doctor didn't have to be the one to pull the trigger. But the problem that I have with that is, despite the fact that the doctor didn't pull the trigger, he was an accomplice to the situation. He's what do they say, complicit to the crime. I mean, he essentially sets it up so that she can do it, and so ultimately he doesn't get out of being the one to cause genocide. He's complicit in the crime. So, it's not even a crime at that point, but he's complicit to the morality of that, as is Ace and Hex. Although you kind of have some more forgiveness for Ace because of how she's developed as a character. That I think she would have pulled the trigger easily without even really kind of batting an eye at it. Now Hex is the more emotional part of it, because he's really starting to fall apart as a character, not in storytelling, but as emotionally as things are dragging on him and really affecting him emotionally now, which I like that. That was one of the things that I think was developed nicely in this, is that Hex is really kind of maybe second guessing his role in this whole thing. And so I appreciated that, but it doesn't really get the doctor out of the conundrum of being the one that causes the genocide by just having the lieutenant do it, which is a whole nother problem, is that the lieutenant, the character was so paint by numbers. I mean, it just
yeah.
everything that came about with that character was, I don't want to say it was predictable, but it wasn't surprising. And so I kind of felt that that was a bit of a missed opportunity there too, to develop her character, differently than any other character that's been in that situation or gone through what she's gone through. And then I found a lot of grown moments when she was, she would talk about her family and how she was in this Dalek concentration camp. And I just kept thinking, well, yeah, I mean, that's sad. I'm sorry. And it does emotionally scar you. But this just feels like a lot of others that have come before you.
Well, then why did you sign up to fight this war if you're so emotionally scarred by what happened in the Dalek camp? How are you a lieutenant? Shouldn't you not be in charge of anything and, be off somewhere dealing with your issues? I'm sorry, but if you're going to, I know, it's a very traumatic experience, but you got to compartmentalize when you're a soldier and when you're in command. I mean, I started to have a little sympathy for her near the end, more so when she started to move past it, but I was very frustrated with her as a character of, you should not be doing this. You have responsibilities that you just need to kind of push it down and move forward and deal with what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and it tries to make her the savior of the peace, and the problem is that she'd already fallen too far by allowing the events to happen, and the sacrifice, or not sacrifice, but the death of the sergeant, who was very much the person that is who the character's painted as this warrior type that doesn't take anything from the Daleks.
And had Khan had more sympathy towards Beth, I would have had more sympathy towards Beth.
Yes, agreed. Or at least worked in a moment that
right.
Yeah.
But she was so fed up with her commander that it made me fed up with her commander.
Yeah, I agree.
As far as the genocide stuff goes, it didn't bother me. I don't think it had the impact it was supposed to, partially because they don't make the creatures sympathetic in any manner. They're monsters. They are a plague, and I didn't see it any different than wiping out the measles.
Yeah.
They may be sentient, but just barely, and not advanced enough to really matter when it's the entire galaxy at stake. And it's not like in Genesis where you're weighing the odds of, well, look at all the allegiances and all the alliances and while the Daleks did horrible, horrible things, some good things did come out of this. They did not present anything good that could come out of these creatures other than the destruction of the Daleks. And then by de facto, assumedly the destruction of the Cybermen, because once the Daleks are gone, they're going to go need to feed on more metal, and then they go attack Cybermen. But other than that, which is just more wanton destruction, I did not see any plus side of leaving these creatures alive. So I thought the genocide arguments wasn't a very strong one against doing it.
Right.
It
certainly doesn't leave it as an atrocity. They're using that word way too sparingly.
Yeah, definitely. But I did like the discussion of,
or not sparingly enough, I guess is the sorry.
Right. The discussion with the scientist comparing him to Davros. I did like that aspect a lot. That was a really great moment between the two of them.
Yeah, like I said, there were moments that really, really worked. I enjoyed the Starship Troopers elements when they were within the fleet trying to protect the civilians. Once they got away from that and started the infighting between the two characters, it became less interesting to me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the professor. I thought he was an interesting character until he kind of de-evolved into the one note. Oh, you're that mad scientist. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
We've seen that before. And I liked the continued relationship between Ace and Hex, and the kind of the little nuggets that they dropped, that despite everything, despite all of the wars they've been dropped into, there's still atrocities that are going on, and Hex hasn't quite acclimated to, which was kind of interesting. And I really liked. I thought Hex showed a lot of. I don't necessarily want to say growth, but he showed a lot of admirable qualities in this one. Trying to stay behind and help the people in the sick bay, despite everything. Which that scene in particular, when the Daleks were coming through the door, was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Several of those moments, I was like, how are they actually going to get out of that one? I'm not sure they should have.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that actually works or not. And then the Doctor, I liked the idea that they were going with this moral and ethical dilemma, but yeah, we just didn't quite. When you're standing in the shadow of Genesis, it's really tough to get out of the shadow of Genesis, unfortunately. And
right.
Yeah.
The Seventh Doctor is certainly a great nominee to put up there and see what happens. But
well, that's what I agree with that. I think I don't think any other Doctor could have starred in this of the classic series Doctors. I don't think any other Doctor could have been placed in this situation and handled it as well as the Seventh Doctor did. So I appreciated the fact that this was a Seventh Doctor story for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody set a timer for pizza rolls.
My computer's rebooting yet again.
Ah.
Apparently, when you lose power, all of your devices take the opportunity to install 20 updates. Curse you, Windows.
Just to revisit the comments I made before, it's not an awful story. It was enjoyable enough, and I think part of that is I'm a bit biased because it was Daleks, and I do enjoy a Dalek story. To me, there are very few bad Dalek stories, and so this was another one of those. And I think because of its run of the mill nature, it felt like a comfortable pair of shoes for me. It just oh, hey, Daleks, I love this. One thing I do want to comment on for sure, nice use of the metal soundtrack. I think it was very much meta and appropriate to do so. And I spotted it or noticed it very early on that, wow, this is quite a different soundtrack for a Doctor Who story. And when we got to the meat of the issue, the fact that they, the creatures would feed on metal, I thought, well, that's just a really, appropriate choice for a heavy driving music soundtrack for a story that has everything to do with, metal. So that was clever.
It gave it such a different feel. Well. And it almost gave it more of a more ominous feel to the entire thing too. Like it gave it additional energies that I didn't think it would have otherwise.
Yeah, tonally it made it a darker story.
Yeah.
Just because it had kind of an edge to it.
Yeah, I noticed that as well and kind of thought the same thing. It was like that. It was not only an interesting sound for the incidental music, but it was good music. It was like, yeah, this is I kind of like this. But it so appropriately fit the scenario that had been set up for it, and it did very much lend to the atmosphere.
It made me think that because this story would have been set around the time that Doctor Who was on television in the late 80s, I kind of thought, this kind of soundtrack would have worked for even the TV series. Withstanding metal-eating monsters, I think there were a lot of stories in Sylvester McCoy's era that this type of soundtrack and this type of tone for a soundtrack, I think, would have worked perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I really liked about the story, and I think I mention this every time we kind of have a Ace and Hex story, is their continuation to call the Doctor on his crap.
Yeah.
Being manipulative and all of that stuff. I just continue to enjoy it, and I like that it's a continuing thread.
Well, they really went to town with it this time, and in the past, they've sort of lamented the fact or seemed frustrated with it, And now they kind of take it in stride and just use it as almost an inside joke with the two. And so I like how that has fundamentally changed from, wow, he just leaves us out of everything. Of course, what else would you expect? To, hey, he leaves us out of everything. Well, what else would you expect? So it changed tonally from the way that they were pushing that issue. And so I thought that was a neat change, sticking with that narrative, but changing the attitude towards it. I thought was clever.
Right.
Anything else you guys want to say about this particular story?
I don't think so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up on the schedule, which should be posted by the time you listen to this. Our next episode is Am I Blue? Discussing the 3 classic series Blu-ray box sets that are available and the special features, and we're going to take an in-depth look into those and whether or not you should upgrade, as well as Robert suggested. I kind of like the idea of adding in, should you maybe ditch physical media altogether? The answer, of course, is no. But
I already know what you're going to say.
Glenn will have a different answer to that. The following week is Big Finish story number 105, The Condemned. Without looking ahead, I look forward to responses on that one. And I went ahead and pushed the book review off one more week just to give us a little extra time with it. So I certainly could use it. Oh, are you done already?
No, but I'm nearly done.
Look at the way to show us all up there.
I'm probably about 8 chapters away, I think, from being finished.
Oh, wow.
I could use a little more time with it, so I pushed it off a week.
I'll show my hand. It's a good read. So
I don't know
how they're going to wrap it up, but
so the following week will be another Big Finish, The Doomwood Curse, which is number 111, and then our book review, Doctor Who meets Scratchman by Tom Baker.
So it's 2.
And beyond that, will be on the website.
2 Big Finish audios, and then
the book. Yes.
Oh, wow! You really pushed it out.
All right. Keith, if people want to help support this podcast, what do they do?
Well, just head to our website, travelingthevortex.com, and there's a Patreon button you can press, and you can donate any amount of money, however often or once, whichever you'd rather, and all that money comes straight back to us. And by being a Patreon member, you get access to some extra stuff occasionally, whenever we feel like we can put out some additional material.
when we can.
Yes. Exclusive stuff that only Patreon subscribers get. You can also check out our Spreadshirt store. That's still active, right?
It is still active.
Go buy some Traveling the Vortex merch and rep us at a local convention.
I was actually on there the other day because I'm working on some new designs. So.
Ooh.
How exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, of course, don't forget you can send feedback to feedback@travelingthevortex.com, and we'd love to hear your opinions on Doctor Who Blu-rays. You going to get them? Do you already have them? And what do you think of them? And we'll include that next week's show as well. Well, if that's going to do it for this time, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing ya. Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.